Hello, my name is Janne Kauhanen, and I'm the host and sauna majori of Cybersecurity Sauna. Today's special episode was recorded on site at the WithSecure Sphere 23 Cybersecurity On conference in Helsinki, where we had an opportunity to talk to some of the guest speakers. I've just sat down with author John Grant to discuss the relationship between cybersecurity and sustainability, your topic here today. So, what are some of the biggest sustainability challenges that are facing organizations today?
First of all, there's a context for sustainability, which is we're in what I think it was the word of the year somebody described as a meta crisis, where resource constraints, deforestation, biodiversity loss, climate change, water stress, very significant in regions like China. So there is a shaky foundation to many businesses. If you're a supply chain business, for instance, I worked with companies like Unilever, IKEA, who are taking, the matter of the world and manufacturing, then you have a set of risks and dependencies and also a very public accountability for the impact that you're having. And if you're in a apparently dematerialized business like information and communication technology, you are still responsible for more carbon emissions than the world airline industry. And you have the fastest growing emissions in the world. So you have a direct accountability for the impact that those industries are having, but also you potentially have a much bigger impact on helping us deal with all of those other issues. So smart supply chain routing software can absorb very much more emissions than people like Microsoft are making with their own data centers and so forth.
So that was going to be my question. When I think sustainability, I think things like, using less packaging and being more careful about the materials. But for us in the cybersecurity industry, people thinking about what product or service they need, what the cyber attackers are doing, things like that. What's a good career path for me to have? Where does sustainability come into all of that?
So sustainability, there's old sustainability and new sustainability. But it's basically, in very simple terms, it's not bad and net good. So not bad is taking care of your impacts, your emissions, the human rights, the packaging, the water, all of that. But basically, my client, who was the boss of IKEA, said the not bad side, it's like saying we didn't kill too many children in our canteens. It's just like taking the edge off the bad that we do to ensure the ongoing of our business and regulation and public acceptance. Net good is where we go, okay, we've got a set of problems in the world. Some of them are human pain points. Actually, security is a really big issue.
Right.
But also we have all of these other crises. How can we make a positive contribution? And all of the leading organizations in the world on sustainability are committed to that net good. So IKEA calls it people and planet positive. Starbucks calls it resource positive. Microsoft has committed to remove all of its historical emissions and make a net negative impact on carbon. And the list goes on. So the net good side is where the action is. And here, most of the things that we're trying to do to drive sustainability from a technical point of view are creating new vulnerabilities to cyber attacks. So there's one report that said that the energy industry has a huge cyber target on its back. And most of the vulnerability is due to the energy transition. So renewable infrastructure is much more distributed, much more remote, and much more reliant on automation. There's a lot of Internet of Things and operating technology, all of which just creates a huge vulnerability. And of course, for a cyber attacker, if you want to cripple a country, you go for the energy, the hospitals and the banks. So it is so sorting out the energy transition and making it secure, because if we don't do that, we're fucked on climate change and everything else. We've got to transition to, smart cities, electric vehicles, renewable infrastructure. And that's the second thing, is that the smartification of the world. There's a recent report by Bain calculated that information and communication technology can make 7.5 times more difference on the net good side, climate abatement, through smart grids, smart cities, smart companies, smart logistics. All of that smartification, again, is vulnerable to cyber attack because it all involves sensors, remote management, all of those things. And it will just take one autonomous truck driving into a school to put that industry back 10 years. So we have to basically secure new assets, which are fundamentally insecure. And then the other thing which is critical for your industry is that the most vulnerable parts of the population to cyber attacks are not the huge corporations and the governments who are spending all this money. They are small businesses in developing countries. And both of those have been identified by independent research as the most vulnerable. And it's kind of like a pandemic. In the case of developing countries, if you let Sudan and Afghanistan be insecure, you are incubating problems and creating, centers for effectively outbreaks for the rest of the world. So we need to help them. And another study found that 60% of small and medium-sized enterprises after a data breach go out of business. And even just the regulatory cost of reporting a breach can put companies out of business. And insurance, which has been covering all of this, is going to be much, much harder. It's not going to be what protects me. So we fundamentally need to deal with the risk. So in a sense, what I'm saying is brilliant news for cybersecurity, because you're moving from addressing the needs of 1% of the institutions in the world to 100%.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable growth opportunity. It's going to require very different architectures and solutions and interventions, but you couldn't be needed more, because we cannot do what we need on the other 9 of the top 10 risks in the world without, information security, data security, and infrastructure security.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. At least our industry is relevant somehow in these discussions.
Yeah. My first chart says, what is the point of a burglar alarm when your house is on fire?
Right, exactly.
I think that's the answer.
Yeah. So, but, other than protecting organizations and people from cyber threats, what else can our industry, cybersecurity industry, do to sort of help sustainability?
So that's the main thing.
Sure.
And actually in new applications, so it may be working at the level of things like blockchain, which is proving to be the least scalable technology since the Zeppelin.
Yep.
Because of energy use and proof of work. So Ethereum 2 sharding, maybe, but basically, I saw a talk by the CEO of ARM Microchips, and he said, we're going to have to work at the hardware level to make autonomous cars and things like that secure. We've never had such a critical application. It's sort of at the level of baby, incubators and things like that in the terms of like human life and vulnerability. And so we probably need, deep innovation within your industry.
Yeah.
I think the other side of huge sides of sustainability is to look at, obviously, your role in society, diversity, social justice, like I said, being able, being affordable. It's like you're kind of information pharmaceuticals. So issues like generic drugs being affordable in India where they're needed most and so forth are just as relevant to your industry. I think the core thing on sustainability, the misnomer, the misperception of sustainability is that it's a secondary agenda over here. I think it's really core what you actually do, and it's what you do good for the world. So if you're a school or a hospital, you're already starting from a very positive base and improving the well-being of society. And I do think the cybersecurity industry has a core business model. Esports, also great. People need entertainment, but they don't start with that high base.
Right.
And, developing, the skills and jobs and looking after people, as we heard from the first speaker today, in a era where many routine jobs can be done by AI, and all of those other pieces will be, all of the other ethical issues in society and business will be relevant as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned already some things where sort of the computer industry, the wider computer industry, could be doing a little bit better, like the resource drain of Bitcoin mining, things like that. Is there anything you can think of that cybersecurity industry could be doing better? Something that we could be doing, but we're not?
Well, there's the absolute basics. So there was a study by Google that looked at machine learning.
Yeah.
And they found that if you have efficient code, the right processors, work in the cloud, and work with data centers on renewables, like Google's data centers are often by a hydro plant by a lake. If you do those 4 things well, you can reduce energy use by 100 times and emissions by 1,000 times. So there is clearly a lot of choices that you can make to fundamentally change the impact that you have.
Yeah. Okay. So if I can just ask you to take out your crystal ball for a minute and think about organizations overall in the next 5 to 10 years, what are some of the things you think that organizations need to change in terms of sustainability? Like changes that are just gonna have to happen?
Well, already had to happen was science-based carbon targets. And the difficulty is right now, so everybody committed to targets.
Right.
That was great. My government in the UK did. A Cambridge academic described the UK's net zero plan as realistic as unicorn's blood spread on magic beans. And the thing
That's not great.
The thing is that these targets are legally binding.
Yeah. So
what we lack in, actually investment in infrastructure and insulation and other stuff, they're now going to have to make up in regulation. So this is going to start hitting companies really hard. I'll give you an example from a recent client was working with the shipping industry, a Finnish company, and they help companies make their energy use more efficient or convert to new fuels. In that industry, the new regulation that started this year called CII means that probably 60 to 80% of your ships now you can't use by 2030 because the regulation, like the German car emission, EU car, it just the bans get stricter and stricter and stricter. So if you're in class B now, which is almost excellent, you'll be in class E by 2030, depending on the class of the ship. So that is going to hit companies very hard, and that kind of stuff becomes super economic. Your business model, your margin. You've seen, all of the stuff in the media this week about food companies and profit gouging and, the supply chain crises that we had. But regulation will have a very similar impact, and it will hit things like the cost of energy, the cost of waste, and so forth. And there are also really stringent guidelines about greenwashing and green codes, and those are also creating reputation risks. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the focus over the last couple of years, everybody remembered that we've been so focused on carbon, a few of those numbers, that there's a big swing to paying attention to the social side of sustainability, social justice, the Black Lives Matter movement and the impact that's had on American companies. And like the FT said, what were the four most important thought leadership topics last year? And two of them were about the social side of sustainability. That was one, and the other was the ethics of the CEO. So that kind of, is this a moral company? Is this good for society? How do they treat their employees? All of that stuff is right there in the boardroom right now. Obviously, economic survival has come up very strongly in the last year as well. So it's not an easy time to be a boss.
No, it's not. But you've certainly given us something to think about, both in this industry and in the industries of our clients. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Absolute pleasure.
That was the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please get in touch with us through Twitter with the hashtag Cybersauna with your feedback, comments, and ideas. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe.